Well, good morning. How is everyone? How many people got all the shots they need? Yes, I'm in that exclusive club myself. You know, in marriages, all marriages have their trials and their concerns. And I will say that in my marriage with my lovely Teresa, of course, we've had our challenges and concerns, but one thing that has never entered our marriage really is jealousy. We're just very confident with one another. We're just not jealous. Till I got my shots. She's a young'un by a few years, and she is so jealous. I told her she just doesn't meet the qualifications for getting shots right now. I said, what about your work in elder care? She says, what work in elder care? I go, you care for me, don't you? I'm an elder. She won't play that card. But she is now concerned I'm going to leave her for an older woman because I really want to go to a restaurant. But that's my concern. So today we're talking about bravery and courage. And it's interesting that just before I was made aware of today's theme, I saw a tremendous amount of courage exhibited by a friend of mine. He's just a few weeks away from turning 80. He's a member of our meditation group. And he has had health problems. He got COVID. He was like one of the first people in Michigan to get COVID back in March, I think, is when he contracted it. And he, of course, no longer has COVID, but it left him tremendously compromised. He already had a heart condition, and the COVID did get into his heart and his lungs, and he has lost a lot of strength over the past year. And it gets winded very easily. Well, he called me a little more than a week ago, and he said, Fred, I think I'm going to die today. And he said it in a manner like he was saying, Fred, I'm going to Meijer today. Can I pick you up anything? I mean, it was just that matter of fact. And I said, I don't think you're going to die. I intuited that. And the fact he was talking to me on the telephone, I thought, okay, but this is serious for him to say that. And I have noticed since then, well, what I did is I went over to his home and I got things ready and I called an ambulance because he couldn't get off the couch. So we called an ambulance. They took him to the hospital and he's now in hospice. So he is confronting his mortality and he is confronting it in a way that is admirable, with a tremendous amount of courage, with an understanding that he's just moving from one place to another place. I will say this too. When I got there, I spent some time with him, cleaned things up a little bit, packed him an overnight bag to go to the hospital, and then called the ambulance, and 4 people came. Of course, they sent a fire truck and an ambulance. And, of course, they're very concerned. My friend John is his name. He was just chilling. And I know that John appreciates my warped, sometimes inappropriate humor. And so John was cogent from the moment I got there till they carted him away. He had all his marbles. But I didn't say that to the people in there, the EMT people. I said after a while when they were there, I said, he was a little bit confused when I got here. So I asked him if he could name the current president. And he did, but it took him 3 tries. And the guy said, Well, that's not uncommon. I said, yeah, but his first two guesses were Zachary Taylor and Rutherford B. Hayes. And they looked at me, and John was just like, yeah, let's lighten this load a little bit here. And they just didn't know how to take what I said until I started laughing, and then they started laughing, and then they took him away. Anyway, I bring that up really just because, as I say, it was a tremendously inspiring scene, and it has been since, because he spent several days in the hospital. They actually got him breathing again, breathing quite well. He's doing much. He is in the process of dying. We know that. But the condition he was in about a week or so ago versus how he is now, he can actually complete a sentence without having to take a rest. So we're pleased with that. And he's eating. He wasn't eating, now he's eating. But he still knows that he may have less than a year on this planet, and he's just perfectly fine with that. So let's get a little bit deeper into this idea of bravery. The reading from today from Chronicles in the Christian Testament: be strong and be of good courage and act. Do not be afraid or dismayed. I wanted to contrast that. Actually, they meld very, very well together. In our Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, it says, not even the direst suffering can shake the equanimity of the wise. They stand unshaken midst the crash of breaking worlds. And that phrase has always inspired me, to stand midst the crash of breaking worlds. So do not establish your happiness on the temporal pleasures of life, for it will soon be blown away by the trials of life. But instead, found your happiness in God, as perceived in meditation, and your joy will be everlasting. Think of how that parallels with, do not be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. And as I dissect the daily word, this is what I've come up with. It starts out with, I deserve the best life has to offer. And I meditated on that a minute, and I thought, what if somebody from another tradition heard that? Let's say somebody from a Methodist or a Catholic tradition comes here, and that's the first thing that they hear. The wisdom of unity. I deserve the best life has to offer. They might question that. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that everybody here is saying, I deserve a new car every year? Or I deserve linen made of Egyptian cotton with a phenomenal thread count? Does that mean I deserve sumptuous dinners every night of the life? Is this a prosperity gospel kind of church? And I don't think so. One could take it that way, that first line. I admit, when I read it, I thought, oh, that's interesting. But then I thought about it more and more, and I realized, oh, wait a minute. What is the best life has to offer? I mean, none of those luxuries are bad in themselves. I wouldn't turn any of those things down that I just mentioned. A nice new car, linen, very comfortable linen, that's all fine. But is that the best life has to offer? I would say no. The best life has to offer is that relationship with the divine as we can conceive the divine. It says, the power of my dreams could take me far. Well, where are we going? In what direction are we going? Well, we could be going in a direction to encourage our prosperity, but our moving towards prosperity is a good thing. as long as we are anchored in divinity. In the Hindu tradition, we have four main goals in life. The first one is pleasure. It's actually a goal, pleasure. The next one is prosperity. And you have to balance the two. The third one is duty. The fourth one is spiritual liberation. So you have to make sure that all four of those work together. So it is okay to want to have a pleasurable existence, to enjoy your life, and it's okay to work for the kind of prosperity that will allow you to have that. But if you don't have a sense of duty and you don't have a sense of spiritual liberation, then those become polluted and will not get you what you want, which is happiness. Then it says, but sometimes I shrink from taking the steps to make them come true. This is perhaps because we lack courage. Now remember that since we are, all of us, the soul, and the soul is divine, and the soul has all of the powers that are listed there, it's not that we lack courage really. We lack the ability to find it within, because it is part and parcel of our nature. All of these powers are latent within. It's simply a matter of tapping into them. So it says, today I say no to timidity as I remind myself that the power of God is always with me. I am a spiritual being. So we're always reminding ourselves to be brave, to be courageous. And one of the things that can make us afraid is getting too close to the divine. We often think, well, courage, that's what happens if we're soldiers in battle. That's what happens if we all of a sudden see a menacing presence, perhaps attempting to inflict some sort of harm on another person. And we always wonder, how would we react in this situation or that situation? Right? It's a common daydream for people. Or they see something on television, they see some sort of horrific event, right? And we place ourselves in that event mentally, going, what would I do? What would I do if I was involved, if I was in a school and there was a shooter? What would I do if I saw someone attack another person in the middle of the street? Right? That's where we often think about bravery and courage. But there's one other way, one other situation where we need to tap into courage, and that is with our relationship to God. Because oftentimes people, especially those people who take the spiritual life very seriously. So for instance, if you have a fairly superficial relationship with someone, right? And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean, we all have superficial relationships with people because we can't have deep relationships with everybody we meet. That would be virtually impossible. Okay, so if you have a superficial relationship with someone you see every once in a while, you greet, you have small talk, you think they're marvelous people, but they're not in your inner circle. One of the things you'll never have to worry about, as long as they stay in that superficial pen, is you're never going to have to risk anything being their friend or acquaintance, right? Things will be maintained on a nice, even level with no real challenges. But then you come over here, and now you're in this relationship with somebody who is, the relationship itself is intense. It's a marital relationship, or it's some other familial relationship, a sibling relationship, or somebody who is a deep and close friend. there is risk. There is the chance for problems, for all sorts of things to develop that may not be pleasant, that may need real work. You don't have to work on this guy over here. He just, serves you your coffee and you chat a little bit and move on with your life. But over here, no, this is the work. A lot of people who have a superficial relationship with God, they're fine. They can, go to church for an hour once a week, try to be nice, say grace before meals, and call it good. And that is where they are in their life, and no judgment. We're all attracted to what we're attracted to, and you can't pull somebody to be attracted to something that they're not. And they may have wonderful, wonderful qualities. Otherwise, they're just not into this whole God thing that we are. So those of us who are into this God thing, who really want to develop a relationship, sometimes can be timid about it. They can be a little bit afraid. I know someone who would go into meditation and feel that God was almost just right there, almost like the Sistine Chapel, just that close. And then she would just jump out of it. She'd freak out because it was getting too close, too intense, and she was afraid. There's a fear that some people have that if they truly merge with the divine, that they will lose their individuality. There's a Hindu tale of an idol of salt. The idol of salt, it's like a person made up of salt. And this idol of salt would walk down to the beach and gaze at the ocean and maybe get really, really close, but then run back. And it wasn't until this idol of salt worked on their courage, found the courage to run into the ocean. And what, of course, happens to an idol of salt when it runs into the ocean? It dissolves into the ocean. But in that dissolution into the ocean, it found its home and its bliss and its joy. So one of the things that really isn't talked a lot about on the spiritual path is this idea of having the courage to jump in feet first in cultivating our relationship with divinity, and to be aware of any fear, any apprehension that might be lurking within us. And if it's there, you deal with it. You acknowledge it. And this is important. My spiritual practices fortify my will and keep me motivated and full of confidence. That's what it says in the Daily Word. Our spiritual practices, our regular spiritual practices, will do exactly that. Fortify our will, keep us motivated, full of confidence. I envision myself bravely moving forward to make my dreams a reality. I affirm I am brave, I am unstoppable, until I feel those words pulsate at every level of my being. So that affirmation on a regular basis, if we need it, we're all at different levels. But one of the things, of course, that helps us be brave, remember it says, face your fears. That's something we've heard all our lives. Face your fears. Once you know what you are afraid of, and you really get down into the depths of what causes that fear, you're halfway there. So I will leave you with just the same advice that we have in today's reading. To acknowledge ourselves. We all acknowledge ourselves as part and parcel of the divine. We all acknowledge that there may be elements of the spiritual life that we are uncomfortable with. There may be a fear of losing our individuality, of merging into the vine, of going somewhere we've never gone before, and then doing the spiritual work to conquer all of that. Let's close our eyes just a moment and implore to that divinity that exists within and beyond us to lead us from darkness to light, from ignorance to wisdom, from fear to courage, and from death to immortality. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you.